Love is a lie, the mail-order bride swore. Then I'll show you what's real. The cowboy replied. The twin suns of Starlight Junction beat down on the dusty streets of the frontier town. Hover carts rattled past, their engines buzzing like restless insects. Robots shaped like long-legged cattle wandered among the buildings, scanning the air for danger. The town seemed quiet at first glance, but there was a tension in the heat-hazed air, a sense that life here was as unpredictable as the desert wind. At the edge of the town, the small spaceport hummed softly. A single shuttle had just landed from the distant colony world of Aurora 9. Its sleek silver body gleamed under the twin suns, and the doors hissed open. Out stepped a woman, tall and slender with sharp green eyes that seemed to measure everything around her. This was Lila Kane, a mail-order bride traveling to meet a man she had never seen in person. She pulled her cloak tighter around her shoulders as she stepped onto the landing pad. The desert heat was harsh, but the chill in her mind was worse. She had spent her life learning to trust no one. People had lied, cheated, and betrayed her in the outer colonies. Love, she had decided, was nothing but a convenient story people told themselves to feel safe. A lie. From a distance, a figure waited. Jace Ryder, the man she had agreed to marry, stood leaning against a hovering horse. His silhouette was rugged, his broad shoulders outlined against the bright sun. Jace was quiet and calm, his dark eyes hidden behind the brim of a worn hat. He had a reputation in Starlight Junction as a sharpshooter and a man who never let anyone get too close. Some said he had a heart of gold, others said he was colder than the desert night. Jace watched as Lila approached. She walked with confidence, though her eyes darted to every shadow and movement, measuring the town, the hover horses, and the distant desert. When she finally reached him, she stopped and studied him. He was taller than she expected, broader too, with a quiet strength in the way he held himself. "You must be Lila Kane," Jace said in a low, steady voice. "I'm Jace Ryder." "I know who you are," Lila replied coolly, her voice carrying the slightest edge of sarcasm. "And I know this is your ranch. I hope it's not as boring as everyone says." Jace's lips twitched in the hint of a smile. He had expected skepticism. Many women who came to Starlight Junction had doubts about him, about the frontier, about the strange new life they were about to face. "It's not boring," he said simply. "Just different." Lila raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. "Different. I've survived storms on Aurora. 9 fought rogue mining bots and dealt with colonists more dangerous than any frontier outlaw. I think I can handle different." Jace nodded, not offended. He had seen enough of the galaxy to know that anyone who traveled alone across the stars had courage, even if they hid it behind sarcasm. "Good. Then you'll fit in fine. Let's get going. The ranch isn't far." They mounted Jace's hover horses. Lila was careful at first, gripping the sides of the saddle as the machine lifted off the ground. The feeling of floating over the desert was strange but exhilarating. The wind whipped past them as they rode out of Starlight Junction and toward the open expanse of sand and rocks. The ranch was isolated, perched on a plateau with a view of jagged mountains in the distance. The land stretched endlessly, dotted with strange neon cacti that glowed faintly under the suns. Jace guided Lila to the main building, a sturdy structure reinforced with solar panels and energy shields. Outside, robotic livestock grazed quietly, their metal bodies glinting in the sunlight. "This is your home for now," Jace said, dismounting and helping Lila down. She looked around, taking in the technology and the solitude. "It's different," she admitted, echoing her earlier words. "Different can be good," Jace said, leading her inside. "You'll get used to it." Inside, the ranch was simple but comfortable. There were rooms for living, a kitchen, and a small workshop where Jace repaired tools and machinery. He showed Lila around, explaining how the energy shields worked, how the robotic livestock were maintained, and how to handle the hover horses safely. Lila listened, her skepticism slowly giving way to curiosity. She asked questions, not to challenge him, but to understand this strange new life. That evening they sat outside on the porch. The twin suns were setting, casting long shadows over the desert. The sky turned a deep shade of orange, and the first stars began to appear. Lila watched the horizon, feeling the vastness of the world around her. "You're quiet," she said suddenly, breaking the silence. "Why don't you talk much?" Jace looked at her, considering. "I watch. I listen. I make sure things don't get out of hand." He paused, then added, "It's safer that way." Lila nodded slowly. She understood. In the frontier, trust was earned, not given. And Jace Ryder was a man who had clearly earned it, even if he didn't speak much. As the night grew darker, the desert came alive with sounds, distant howls, the hum of machines, and the occasional flash of light from a hovering patrol drone. Lila felt a thrill she hadn't felt in years. This place was dangerous, yes, but it was alive, real, unlike the sterile colony she had left behind. But old habits die hard. Lila's thoughts returned to love. To her, it had always been a lie, a story people told to make life bearable. She watched Jace, strong and silent, and wondered if she could ever trust someone like him. Could love ever be real? She shivered, partly from the cool desert night, partly from the uncertainty stirring in her heart. Jace, for his part, noticed her restlessness. He didn't push. He had patience. He had seen the walls people built around themselves, and he had learned that the only way to break them down was through respect, courage, and quiet acts of care. Over the next few days, Lila settled into ranch life. She helped with the robotic livestock, repaired broken machinery, and learned to ride the hover horses more confidently. Jace gave her space when she needed it, guidance when she asked, and protection when danger appeared, like when a stray dust storm swept through the plains, scattering equipment and sending robotic sheep tumbling. Lila began to see Jace in a new light. He was not just a rugged cowboy. He was clever, resourceful, and quietly heroic. When a malfunctioning drone charged toward them one afternoon, it was Lila who noticed the fault in its programming, and Jace who trusted her solution enough to act. Together, they saved the livestock. By the end of the week, Lila found herself smiling more, talking more, and thinking less about her past betrayals. She still believed love was a lie, but a small part of her wondered if perhaps there was something more here, something she had never dared to hope for. One evening, as they watched the twin suns set again, Jace broke the silence. "You're not like the others," he said quietly. "Most women who come here, they either run away or complain. You face it." Lila turned to him, surprise in her eyes. "Face what?" "Life," he said simply. "The desert. The danger. The truth about yourself." "You face it." She looked away, unsure of what to say. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen. Not for her strength, not for her skill, not even for her cleverness, but for her. Lila didn't respond, but a small smile played on her lips. The night air was cool, the desert vast and endless, and for the first time, Lila Kane felt a flicker of something unfamiliar in her chest. Could it be trust? Could it be hope? She didn't know yet, but one thing was certain. This frontier, this cowboy, and this life were unlike anything she had ever experienced. And for better or worse, she was here to stay. The morning sun rose over the desert, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Dust swirled across the plateau, and robotic sheep grazed silently among the neon cacti. Lila Kane awoke to the faint hum of Jace Ryder's workshop, where he was already tending to the ranch's energy systems. She stretched, feeling the stiff muscles of a body unused to frontier work, and rubbed the sleep from her eyes. The ranch was quiet except for the sound of machines. Lila had begun to adapt to this strange alien landscape, though the physical labor still exhausted her. Feeding the robotic livestock, maintaining the hover horses, and checking the solar panels was harder than she imagined. Yet, with each task, she discovered something new about herself. She realized she was stronger than she had believed. Jace appeared in the doorway, wearing his usual calm expression. He held a small toolkit and offered it to her. "Today, you'll help me repair the solar turbines," he said. "They're critical for the energy shields. Without them, we won't last a week in a storm." Lila accepted the toolkit, her hands gripping the worn leather handles. She followed Jace out to the turbines, high metal structures that rotated slowly, glinting in the sun. "I hope I don't break anything," she said, trying to keep her voice light. "You won't," Jace replied simply. His confidence was quiet but solid. It reminded her of why she had agreed to this journey. Something about him made her feel safe. She had never felt that before. As they worked, Jace taught her how to calibrate the turbines, adjust the circuits, and monitor the energy flow. Lila listened carefully, impressed by his knowledge. He didn't rush her or speak down to her. He explained everything patiently, giving her the space to learn. For the first time in her life, she realized that being cared for didn't mean being controlled. "Why do you trust me so easily?" she asked after a while, wiping sweat from her brow. Jace looked at her, his dark eyes steady. "I don't," he said. "Not yet. But I've seen enough to know you're capable." "And capable people deserve a chance." Lila blinked, caught off guard. She wasn't used to anyone giving her a chance without expecting something in return. She wanted to argue, to say that trust was earned differently, but she stayed silent, letting the words sink in. By midday, they had finished repairing the turbines. The desert sun was high, and the heat pressed down on them like a physical weight. Jay suggested a break, and they sat under the shade of the main building. Lila watched the horizon, where distant sandstorms twisted and shifted like restless spirits. "I've faced worse than this," she said softly, mostly to herself, "but nothing feels like this place. It's—" Jace nodded, understanding without needing explanation. "The desert has its own rules," he said. "You survive by respecting it, by knowing it, by facing it together." Lila thought about his words, feeling a spark of something unfamiliar. Could survival and trust go hand in hand? Could facing danger together build a bond stronger than fear? She didn't answer, but she remembered his words. The calm of the day was shattered in the late afternoon when the distant whine of engines reached their ears. Lila tensed. "What is that?" she asked. Jace's eyes narrowed. "Trouble," he said. "Space bandits." The two of them climbed onto the plateau overlooking the ranch. In the distance, a caravan of hover carts, armed and dangerous, raced toward them. Dust and sand swirled around the vehicles, and small drones buzzed ahead, scanning for weaknesses. Jace's hand rested on the grip of his blaster, but he didn't panic. His calmness steadied Lila, though her heart raced. "They're after the livestock," Jace explained. "They want the tech, the robotic sheep. We can't let them take it." Lila felt a surge of adrenaline. Her past life had taught her to react quickly under pressure, and she now had the chance to prove herself. "What do I do?" she asked. "You follow my lead," Jace said. "Stay close, watch, and trust your instincts." As the bandits closed in, Jace and Lila moved with precision. He directed the robotic sheep into a defensive formation, while Lila monitored the drones and the bandits' weapons. When a laser lasso flew toward a sheep, she calculated its trajectory and activated a small repulsion field, knocking the lasso aside. Jace glanced at her with a mix of surprise and approval. "You're good," he said quietly, almost to himself. The bandits tried to flank them, but Jace anticipated the move and positioned Lila to cover the weak points. Together they repelled the attackers, the clash of technology and skill echoing across the desert. By the time the bandits realized they were outmatched, they retreated into the horizon, leaving a trail of dust and sparks behind them. Lila's heart was pounding. That worked," she said, barely believing it. Jace placed a hand on her shoulder, steadying her.
"You did it," he said. "You saved the herd."
"And you saved me." For the first time, Lila felt the warmth of pride. Not for herself alone, but for what they had accomplished together. She looked at Jace, and something unspoken passed between them. It wasn't love yet. It wasn't trust fully formed. But it was the beginning. Over the next few days, they worked side by side, repairing damage from the attack and reinforcing the ranch's defenses. Jace taught Lila how to read the desert winds, how to anticipate storms, and how to use the terrain to their advantage. She began to understand the subtle ways he moved through life, calm, prepared, and deeply aware of the world around him. In return, Lila shared her knowledge of machines and tech from Aurora. 9. She improved the robotic livestock's programming, made the turbines more efficient, and installed a new sensor system to detect intruders. Jace watched her work, impressed by her skill and grateful for her contribution. The ranch was safer because of her, and so was he. One evening, as they rested on the porch after a long day, the twin suns dipped below the horizon, leaving a sky painted with stars. Lila picked up a small piece of broken metal from the day's work and examined it thoughtfully. "You know," she said quietly, "I never thought I'd find someone who could work with me like this. Most men, they'd just tell me to stay out of the way." Jace looked at her, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Most men aren't me," he said. She laughed softly, a sound that surprised her. She hadn't laughed freely in years. "I suppose not," she admitted. They sat in silence for a while, watching the desert. Lila felt a strange sense of calm, something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time. She began to see Jace not as a stranger, not as a man she was obligated to marry, but as a partner, someone she could rely on, someone who relied on her. That night, as she lay in the small guest room, Lila thought about the events of the week. The danger, the hard work, the quiet moments of connection. It had all changed something inside her. She was still cautious, still wary of love, still uncertain about what the future held, but she was beginning to hope. Jace, in his own room across the hall, stared out the window at the desert. He thought about Lila, about her cleverness, her courage, and the spark of life he had seen in her eyes. He knew she had walls built from betrayal and pain, But he also knew that walls could be broken, not by force, but by patience, understanding, and shared experience. The desert night was quiet, but it was alive with possibility, and for the first time Lila Kane wondered if love might not be a lie after all. The next morning a new challenge awaited. Supplies were running low, and a trip into the dangerous canyons beyond the ranch was necessary. But Lila no longer feared the journey. She had learned to trust Jace, not blindly, but carefully, and she felt a small thrill at the adventure ahead. Together they prepared for the journey, checking weapons, hover horses, and drones. The bond between them, fragile but growing, was a promise of what might come. They were partners now, facing the harsh frontier together, and neither knew exactly what the future would hold, but both were ready to find out. And as the twin suns rose over the horizon, painting the desert in gold, Lila Kane took a deep breath. The frontier was harsh, dangerous, and unpredictable, but it was real, and so, perhaps, was the connection she felt with Jace Ryder. The day began like any other on the Starlight Junction Plateau. The twin suns shone brightly over the desert, and the neon cacti cast long, strange shadows across the rocky terrain. Lila Kane and Jace Ryder worked side by side, checking the ranch's energy shields and maintaining the robotic livestock. The desert seemed calm, almost deceptively peaceful. But Jace had learned long ago that the frontier rarely stayed peaceful for long. He scanned the horizon, his sharp eyes catching a faint shimmer in the distance. "Lila," he said quietly, "we have trouble approaching. Stay close." Lila followed him without question, her heart quickening. She had come to trust Jace's instincts, even if she didn't always understand them. The shimmer grew into the unmistakable glow of a galactic storm, an unusual phenomenon in this region, and with it, small rogue drones, likely abandoned mining bots, began moving erratically. The storm hit faster than expected. Dust and charged particles whipped across the plateau, and the ranch's energy shields flickered. Sparks flew from the turbines, and robotic livestock scattered in panic. Lila's pulse raced as she helped stabilize the turbines, her hand steady despite the chaos. "This isn't just a storm," Jace shouted over the wind. "It's dragging the old mining drones toward us. They're aggressive when damaged. We need to protect the ranch." Lila nodded, gripping a control panel. Her mind raced, calculating the drones' possible paths and the weaknesses in the shields. "I can reroute power to the defense drones," she called. "It'll buy us time." Jace glanced at her, impressed by her quick thinking. "Do it!" Together they worked feverishly, rerouting energy and reinforcing the shields. Sparks flew as circuits overloaded, and the wind ripped at their clothing. For a moment, Lila felt fear tighten in her chest. She had faced storms before, but never like this. Never with the responsibility of protecting an entire ranch, a man she was beginning to care about, and creatures that relied on them for survival. The first drone struck the energy shield with a metallic crash. Sparks erupted, and Lila's heart jumped. She activated the emergency countermeasures, sending a pulse that pushed the drone back. "One down," she said breathlessly. "Good," Jace said, firing his blaster with precise aim at another incoming drone. His movements were calm, almost graceful, even as the chaos swirled around them. Lila watched him, admiration mixing with something else she didn't fully understand, something warmer than respect. The storm intensified. Dust and electrical energy crackled in the air, making the atmosphere thick and heavy. The drones seemed endless, and every moment brought a new threat. Lila felt a hand on her shoulder. She looked up to see Jace, his face serious but steady. "Trust me," he said simply. She nodded, letting him guide her movements. Together they fought the drones, moving in rhythm, predicting each other's actions without words. It was as if they had known each other far longer than the short weeks they had spent together. Then disaster struck. A drone broke through the shields and charged toward the main turbine, the heart of the ranch's energy system. If it was destroyed, the shields would fail completely, leaving everything exposed. Lila froze for a heartbeat, realizing she was the closest to the turbine. Jace reacted instantly. "Move!" he shouted. He grabbed her arm and pulled her to safety, just as the drone slammed into the turbine. Sparks exploded, and a wave of heat knocked them both to the ground. Lila's heart pounded. We can't let this happen again," she said, her voice trembling. Jace nodded, his expression hardening. "We'll fix it. Together." Using the temporary shields, they approached the damaged turbine. Lila studied the drone's programming, recognizing flaws in its guidance system. "If I can override the controls, we can turn it off," she said, determination flashing in her eyes. "Do it," Jace replied. Lila worked quickly, typing commands into the panel while the storm raged around them. The wind tore at her hair, sand whipped her face, and electricity crackled dangerously near the exposed circuits. Every second felt like an eternity. Then, with a final command, the rogue drone halted, spinning harmlessly before collapsing to the ground. Jace exhaled slowly, a rare smile flickering across his face. "You did it," he said. Lila felt a surge of pride and relief. "We did it," she corrected, smiling back at him. Their eyes met, and for a brief moment the world outside the ranch didn't exist, only the two of them, standing together amidst the wreckage of the storm. As they repaired the turbine and restored power to the shields, Lila realized something profound. She had always believed that love was a lie, that feelings were dangerous illusions. But here, in the midst of chaos, working side by side with Jace, she felt something undeniable. Care, trust, connection. It was real, and it scared her. After the storm subsided, the desert was quiet again, but the ranch bore the marks of the battle. Robotic livestock were scattered, and the turbines were scorched. Lila wiped her hands on her pants, her body exhausted but her spirit alive. She looked at Jace, who was surveying the damage with a calm, calculating eye. "You handled yourself well," he said, finally turning to her. "Most people would have panicked." "I didn't panic," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. I wanted to protect this place. And you." Jace's eyes softened. "I know." There was a pause, heavy with unspoken words. The storm had changed something between them. Fear had given way to trust. Trust had sparked connection. And connection was a dangerous, beautiful thing that neither of them fully understood yet. That evening, as they sat on the porch, Lila looked at the stars. The twin suns had set, leaving the desert bathed in silver light. She thought about her past, about betrayals, broken promises, and lies she had endured. And yet, for the first time, she wondered if perhaps there was something worth believing in, something real. Jace joined her, handing her a small cup of steaming tea. "You saved the ranch today," he said. "But more importantly, you saved me." Lila looked at him, startled. You really mean that?" He nodded. "I do. And I think this means we can handle whatever comes next. Together." Her heart skipped a beat. She had been taught to doubt, to hide, to expect betrayal. But here was a man, calm and steady, telling her that she was trusted and valued. It was frightening and exhilarating. The days that followed were quieter, but the connection between them grew stronger. They repaired the ranch, tended the robotic livestock, and shared meals under the starlit sky. Jace taught Lila how to aim a blaster properly, how to track energy readings in the turbines, and how to read the desert winds. Lila taught Jace how to optimize the robotic sheep, adjust the turbines more efficiently, and even troubleshoot minor malfunctions in the energy shields. Each lesson, each shared task, built trust. Each glance, each word of encouragement, built connection. Lila realized she was beginning to rely on him, not out of obligation, but out of choice. And Jace seemed to be feeling the same. One evening, after a long day of repairs, they sat in silence on the plateau. The desert was calm, the stars shimmering like tiny lanterns in the sky. Lila leaned back on her elbows, staring at the horizon. "Jace," she began, unsure of her words. "Yes," he replied, his voice gentle. I don't know if I can ever fully believe in love," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I feel something I didn't expect." Jace smiled softly. "You don't have to call it love yet," he said. "But what you feel, it's real." And that's enough for now. Lila felt a warmth spread through her chest. It wasn't the fiery passion she had read about in old stories. It was something steadier, quieter, and just as powerful. Connection, trust, and the possibility of something more. The desert night stretched on, peaceful but alive. And for the first time, Lila Kane allowed herself to hope. Not recklessly, not blindly, but carefully. The frontier was dangerous, unpredictable, and harsh. But with Jace Ryder by her side, she felt ready to face it all. The storm had tested them, pushed them to their limits, and forced them to confront fear and uncertainty. But in doing so, it had revealed something even stronger than courage. The bond between two people who chose to face life together. As they finally retired for the night, Lila felt a sense of calm she hadn't known in years. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing. She was no longer alone. And perhaps, just perhaps, Love wasn't the lie she had believed it to be. The twin suns of Starlight Junction rose slowly over the plateau, spilling golden light across the desert. The ranch lay quiet, almost peaceful, as the robotic sheep grazed and the turbines hummed softly. Lila Kane stretched, feeling the familiar ache of yesterday's repairs, but also the strange warmth of satisfaction. She had learned much in the last few weeks, about machines, about survival, and, unexpectedly, about trust. Jace Ryder appeared at the doorway, hat tilted low against the morning sun. He watched her for a moment, his expression unreadable, then smiled. "Ready for today?" he asked. Lila wiped her hands on her pants and nodded. "I think so. What's the plan?" "There's a canyon supply run," Jay said. "We need materials for the new shield array. The canyon is risky, but we can handle it." Lila's stomach tightened slightly at the thought. The canyons were dangerous, filled with jagged rocks, unpredictable winds, and occasionally rogue drones from the old mining operations. But she had come a long way from the cautious woman who had arrived weeks ago. She squared her shoulders and smiled. "Let's do it." They prepared the hover horses, checking the fuel cells and ensuring the cargo crates were secure. Lila double-checked the defensive drones, installing small improvements she had devised to detect ambushes or rogue machines. Jace watched her work, silently impressed by how quickly she had adapted to ranch life. Once they were ready, they rode out together, the hover horses gliding over the rocky desert like ghosts. The wind whipped past them, carrying the scent of dry earth and faint ozone from the turbines. The desert seemed endless, but Lila no longer felt intimidated by its vastness. With Jace beside her, she felt capable, alert, and alive. As they approached the canyon, shadows grew long across jagged cliffs. The wind became stronger, funneling through the narrow gaps and tugging at their horses. Lila held tight to the reins, feeling both fear and exhilaration. "Keep your eyes open," Jace warned. "These canyons are unpredictable," Lila nodded, scanning the cliffs. Her heart skipped when a shadow moved on the rocks above them. A rogue drone likely abandoned long ago, but still dangerous. She activated the defensive pulse she had installed, sending a shockwave that temporarily disabled the drone. Jace covered her back with precise shots, the laser bolts flashing across the canyon. They pressed forward, cautious but determined. The canyon was a maze of jagged rock and deep chasms, but they moved with careful coordination, their trust in each other growing with every step. Lila realized she no longer hesitated when Jace gave instructions. She acted instinctively, anticipating his movements as if they had trained together for years. Hours passed. They collected the materials, carefully loading them onto the hover horses. The sun was beginning to set, and the canyon glowed in amber light, casting long, dramatic shadows. For a moment, Lila paused, looking around at the beauty of the desert and the strength of the plateau. It was wild, dangerous, and alive. And she was part of it now. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Jay said, his voice quiet as he joined her. Lila nodded, smiling. "Yes, it is." He glanced at her, studying her face. "You've changed," he said. She tilted her head. "I think I'm changing," she admitted. "I never thought I could trust someone, but with you, I feel like I can." Jace's eyes softened. "Trust is earned," he said, "and you've earned mine." The ride back to the ranch was quiet, comfortable. Lila felt a strange sense of peace, a feeling she hadn't allowed herself in years. She realized that the walls she had built around her heart were starting to crumble, not because she wanted them to, but because someone had shown her patience, courage, and care. When they arrived at the ranch, the townsfolk of Starlight Junction had gathered, curious about their journey. Some waved, some nodded, and a few whispered about the bravery of the two who had faced the canyon storm together. Jace and Lila exchanged a glance, understanding that they had not only survived a dangerous journey, but also earned the respect of the community. Over the next few days, the ranch buzzed with activity. Lila helped organize repairs and upgrades, teaching the townsfolk some of the techniques she had developed on Aurora 9. Jace worked alongside her, sometimes silently, sometimes offering guidance. They laughed, shared meals, and spoke more freely than ever before. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, painting the desert sky in vibrant shades of purple and gold, Lila and Jace sat on the plateau, watching the robotic sheep move quietly in the fading light. "I never thought I'd find someone who could understand me," Lila said softly. Jace looked at her, his expression gentle. "I didn't either. But here we are." They sat in silence for a moment, letting the calm of the desert wash over them. Then, without thinking, Lila reached out and touched his hand.
He didn't pull away.
Instead, he held it, their fingers intertwined. The gesture was simple, quiet, but it spoke volumes. It was trust, connection, and the first true sign of something deeper. "I can't pretend I'm not." "You don't have to," Jace said. "I'll wait. I'll be patient. We'll take this one day at a time." Her heart swelled. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel the need to hide behind walls or sarcasm. Here, in the desert on this frontier, she felt safe. She felt alive, and she felt something she hadn't believed possible: hope. Next morning, they prepared for a community celebration. The townsfolk had helped repair the ranch, and together they had built a new section of shield arrays and a small observation tower. The celebration was modest but heartfelt. Lanterns glowed, music played from old instruments, and people shared stories of the desert and the stars. Lila found herself smiling freely, laughing at jokes, and even teaching a few children how to handle the hover horses safely. Jace watched her from a distance, his chest warm with pride and admiration. He had seen many people come and go in Starlight Junction, but Lila was different. She was strong, clever, and brave, and she had chosen to stay. As the evening drew to a close, Leela and Jace stepped away from the crowd, walking toward the edge of the plateau. The desert stretched endlessly before them, bathed in the light of the twin moons rising above the horizon. "Jace," Leela said quietly, "I don't know what the future holds, but I do know one thing." He looked at her, waiting. "I trust you," she said simply, "and I think I finally learned that love might not be a lie." Jace smiled, a warm, genuine smile that lit up his face. He took her hand again, holding it gently. "And I'll show you that it's real," he replied. They stood together, watching the desert glow under the moons. The ranch behind them was safe, thriving, and full of life. The town of Starlight Junction slept peacefully, knowing that the frontier, though harsh and unpredictable, had two people who could face it together. Lila leaned against Jace, feeling the steady strength of his presence. She thought of the storms, the danger, and the challenges they had faced. Each one had brought them closer, teaching them patience, courage, and trust. And now, with the desert stretching endlessly before them, she felt a sense of freedom she had never known. For the first time, she allowed herself to hope fully, not recklessly, not blindly, but carefully and completely. She knew that life on the frontier would always be challenging, that dangers would come and go, and that the desert was unpredictable. But she also knew that with Jace Ryder by her side, she could face anything. The twin moons rose higher, casting silver light across the plateau. Lila and Jace stood together, holding hands, feeling the quiet strength of the desert and the even quieter strength of their bond. The frontier was vast and wild, but they had found something even greater: trust, connection, and the possibility of love. And as they watched the moons reflect off the metallic sheen of the robotic sheep, Lila Kane knew, without a doubt, that she was home. The adventure was far from over. The desert would test them again, the stars would bring new challenges, and life would always be unpredictable. But together, they were unstoppable. For now, under the twin moons of Starlight Junction, the cowboy and the mail-order bride stood together, ready to face whatever came next. And love, once thought a lie, had finally found its truth.